Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Right, Left, Up, Down podcast. I am your host, Spencer Allen. Just as a reminder, the views expressed on this podcast do not reflect any organizations that our host or co-host belong to. And who are my co-hosts?
This is Anushka Pandey. I am a junior here at Indiana University, and I am the current president of the College Democrats.
And I'm Dylan Burns. I'm also a junior here at Indiana University, and I am the president of the College Republicans at IU.
Today, this is going to be episode 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Second Amendment and Gen Z. This is going to be a fun one.
I have lots to say on both those.
On both of those?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I've made some Gen Z observations lately. For those who don't know, I'm like 100 years old. I'm a millennial. I'm 35, so much older than
forgive you.
Than my co-hosts here. Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your take on
I am too.
on Gen Z, because I have a take on Gen Z as well. I'll be interested to see how much we all align on this.
You're gonna be a traitor to your own generation.
100%.
Okay, I won't be. That settles it.
I could say some things about millennials too, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
think we could all.
couldn't we all? Yeah.
Yeah.
Every group has its positives and negatives.
At least we're not Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
This is true.
We're gonna start with the Second Amendment, everybody's favorite topic.
Woo.
And I just want to preface this with a little background about myself that I didn't mention in episode 1. I do have a master's in criminology, and I did teach criminology for a few years at a different university. You can just look up Rate My Professors. You'll see which one. But one thing I learned very quickly when I was teaching criminology to college freshmen was that none of them had any idea what their rights were. None of them could. Everybody knows the first 2 amendments, but that's it. Like, none of them knew what the Constitution, basically what the Constitution was.
Yikes.
Like, a lot of them, you would say, recite the Constitution, or something you know about the Constitution, they would start saying something about, like, the Declaration of Independence. Like,
How much faith we have in the next generation.
yeah, it's very, very spooky what it was. Well, all that. So I kind of just organized all of my criminology classes. So it's kind of like, to understand chemistry, you need to know the periodic table. So to understand the criminal justice system, you've got to have some basic understanding of what the Constitution is and what it says and what your rights are. So I would have a mini unit at the beginning of each semester just going over the Constitution. The way I always approached the Second Amendment was this. It says nothing about guns. Both of you know what it says?
A well-regulated militia necessary
Necessary weapons, right?
No.
No.
Sort of arms.
Arms.
It
Oh,
says
yes,
arms.
yes. I
Yeah.
didn't know if you wanted the whole thing, but yeah, it says
Yeah.
right to keep and bear arms shall not be
That's where I was
infringed.
going, yeah. And I would always mention that. Like, it doesn't say anything about guns. It says arms, which at the time was anything from bayonets, knives, guns, to cannons.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't specifically mean guns. So if we're going to go by that very literal definition, that means that today the Second Amendment would technically guarantee everyone the right to an Apache helicopter and a nuclear weapon. So those are arms. So are pocket knives. Somewhere between a pocket knife and a nuclear warhead, there is a line, and that's where the debate should be. Like, where is the line between a pocket knife and a nuke? And I guess we can start from there.
That I'll just say, that is a great way of framing that.
I
have
agree.
not thought of it in that. Like, I've always known that, like, yes, it's the word arms, not the word gun or knife or anything. Yeah. And to understand, I guess what that, not to say implies, but how that translates to the modern day, but to kind of think of it as, people will always talk about, they wrote this back then when they had muskets and stuff, but I mean, they also had cannons back then too, and like nobody's trying to go buy a cannon where you got to stuff the giant cannonball in there and pack the powder and.
This isn't a Looney Tunes episode.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is a good thing, like between
where
a
do you draw
pocket
the line?
knife
Yeah.
and a nuke.
Yeah, this is why assault rifles are typically very controversial, because they kind of blur that line between a civilian weapon and a military weapon.
I can start on this one. I think that's fair, because I also want to, you set up a lot of the background of it, but I do want to establish where I personally stand. because I know, the further left you get, the more extreme it gets. I'm not with anybody that's saying we should, not have any guns. We shouldn't allow that at all. I think it is in the Constitution for a reason. But I was actually going to make a very similar point just to start off about the reason behind the Second Amendment being the militias and how you stole my point. But how that means that the scale has changed a lot, because if we're going with the militia example to fight off a tyrannical government, you would need something a lot stronger than a handgun, for example. So I think that inherently calls into question the Second Amendment, and makes it a more, nuanced conversation than simply, is this a constitutional right or is it not? That being said, I think that it makes the most sense to establish the debate over what types of reforms should or shouldn't be there, in terms of gun control. A lot of my argument here is going to be probably in response to yours, but I think the basis in my head is that, like any other right that Americans have, constitutional or otherwise, there has to be some sort of limit. I think that's just how we govern, because otherwise it would be a lot more anarchical. So that being said, I think there has to be some level of reform and gun control. I think things like background checks just make a lot of sense. Things like making sure that violent offenders can't access weapons, domestic violence included, makes a lot of sense. Obviously, everything is on a scale, but I think those are the really basic ones. I think it should be harder to get your driver's license, it should be harder to own a gun than get your driver's license type of thing. Whereas, the example of walking into a Walmart and purchasing a gun, it's a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. And the assault weapon issue, we'll get into this, I'm sure. But I do think I agree with the differentiation between civilian weapons and, weapons of war, especially when hunting arguments come into play, because you wouldn't, hunt a deer with an AR-15. There wouldn't be much left. I think those types of things shouldn't be accessible, especially considering how they're being used. I'll start there and let you go ahead and see where we're heading.
So the one kind of a side note that I'll make that I actually heard semi-recently that I really, really liked is everybody loves to bring up and say, the right to keep and bear arms, and they'll be like, oh, this was written when there were muskets, and, really good, a really proficient individual with a musket could fire, 2 or 3 shots in a minute. And you can have somebody with an AR-15 or a handgun. If you're really, really good, you can shoot a full clip, whether that's, 12 plus 1 rounds in a handgun or 30 rounds in a, AR-15 or whatever. I mean, you can shoot that in, seconds, definitely under a minute. And they'll be like, so, that's not the intent or anything, or, look at, they try and take that view of, that's what it was back then. I don't think the founders ever thought, where gun technology would be or weapons or anything like that. So we should use that as our justification for maybe trying to restrict people's access to high-capacity magazines or, assault weapons, high-powered rifles, stuff like that. And what I think is interesting, at least, and funny to me, but interesting, is everybody loves to use that comparison or try and show that differentiation between when the Constitution was written and now. But then if that's the logic we're going with, wouldn't the First Amendment only apply to the newspaper and what you write in a scroll? Because by that logic, the framers never dreamed up the internet or TikTok or Twitter. So if we're going to go with the standard of, Second Amendment, you could shoot a couple rounds in a minute. We're going to use this as, justification for trying to limit much more efficient weapons now. I feel like nobody will then turn around and say, oh, yeah, but if that's the case, nobody has free speech on TV. Nobody has free speech on the internet. You only get free speech if you're printing in a newspaper or writing pamphlets or physical books, right? And I think that highlights the disparity. I don't want to say hypocriticalness, because I don't think it's hypocritical, but I think that maybe highlights the disparity between the kind of logic some individuals will try and use to try and justify massive restrictions on firearms, but then they won't apply that same logic to other amendments as well, or to other rights we have as well. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, because I like when I heard that, and I kind of sat there and it took me a while and I thought about it, I was like, that's a fair point. As to some of the things you've said, I definitely, because we have to realize that, we live in an imperfect world. I think in a perfect world, in a perfect society, you should be able to go to a Walmart and buy a gun. But we don't live in a perfect society, and we don't live in a perfect world, and there are bad people that want to do bad things. And it's, how you learned, at least when I was in, elementary school, you have the one idiot in third grade that causes a mess or doesn't listen to the teacher, and everybody gets 10 minutes of recess time off, even though only one person was the offender. And so, unfortunately, because that is the case, I do think we have to, as a country, look at ways we can put checks in place on firearms. I don't think that is by limiting what kinds of firearms a person can buy necessarily. And when I say a person, I mean, somebody with no criminal history or violent history, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you have a car, you got to get a car license. Like in the state of Indiana, we have constitutional carry. You don't have to have a license to own a gun. I think personally that's a bit much. Like I have my carry license even though I don't need it, but
you're talking about permitless carry, right?
Permitless, yeah, like constitutional carry.
Okay.
Permitless carry, like in the state of Indiana,
clarify, yeah.
Like there's some other states as well. I couldn't list them all where you don't even have to have a license to carry a handgun. I think that leaves too much open to something going wrong, and I understand, when people push back on that and say I have a right to own a gun. Yes, the Constitution doesn't say that you have the right to be able to acquire an arm without any sort of, process. And I think you also have to realize that, because there are bad people, horrible people, sick people out there that do bad things, we have to have some sort of base level of, I don't want to use the word regulation, but some sort of safety system in place so that we can try and limit firearms from falling into the hands of individuals that would seek to do harm with them. So,
I mean, that's a pretty fair base. I don't know, Spencer, if you want to add anything before I
was going to say some things. I didn't want to cut it. If I'm starting to say something that is your point, just kind of wave me and tell me to shut up.
All right.
But just I didn't really establish my role in this in the first episode very well. Personally, I'm kind of more in the center politically, but I am on the left side of that, so I am a little bit liberal, more liberal than conservative. So I'm going to kind of be like a moderator here sometimes, devil's advocate in some areas, and there are some things on both sides that I just kind of want to point out. Once again, going back to when I used to teach, I would step back and look at things completely from outside the political sphere to try to explain to people well, from the other side, this is what that looks like. So from what you were just saying, the whole idea that when the writers of the Constitution wrote that down, they weren't talking about AR-15s, they were talking about muskets, and people bring that up a lot. But the point of that kind of is, back then a musket was as good as an AR-15.
Yes.
Because the opposing side
also had muskets.
Yeah, it's not about the strength of the weapon as much as it is about equalizing the populace against the ruling party. With that being said, now that the military and governments have nuclear warheads and helicopters, does that kind of nullify that argument because the average person can't have that?
I think that's a fair point, and I definitely agree with the whole idea of trying to equalize power between the populace and the government. What I find interesting, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is your argument, but the argument that somebody who would bring that up would try and say is, oh, because, you know, the government has nukes and tanks and F-35s and, you know, aircraft carriers, does that nullify that argument, and then therefore can we just try and limit what firearms individuals have regardless? And to that I would say no, because sure, while the government has, you know, boats and tanks and planes, I think you also have to look at like a numbers standpoint. The U.S. military has roughly 3 million service members in it. And of that 3 million, I don't know the number, but not all of them are infantrymen and women, right? So I'm going to say maybe a third are infantry. I personally think it's probably less just because I've seen how much support and logistics goes into stuff. But even if you said there's like 1 million or 2 million of the 3 that are, you know, infantry, that are soldiers that are trained in fighting or that are operating or flying planes or boats or launching whatever, I think when you compare that against 300 million Americans, I think eventually the large numbers went out. And so maybe back in the late 1700s, it was a more even match between a government and the citizenry. I think the size disparity between the general population and the military has grown. And if it were to come to some sort of conflict, you know, maybe we would the population would incur a lot more casualties because of the government having planes and bombs and stuff. But I think if you look at a numbers standpoint, it still puts us on a roughly even playing field. Except now we've just come up with more efficient, deadly ways of killing, and so there's just going to be more death on both sides. But
that's just a human thing.
Yes.
But, like, what is an AR-15 going to do against, like, autonomous drones bombing civilians?
That's another good point. Like, I was going to bring that up, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just the weapons. It's just all this sophisticated stuff.
Yeah. Like, I don't know that any number of civilians would, just because they have guns, or just because they have AR-15s, like, whatever it may be, that we're drawing a reasonable line, like, before military, like, full military nukes, bombs, whatever. If we're drawing a line before that, which I'm assuming you are,
yeah, I don't think people should have nukes. Yeah.
I just, like, for the sake of it, like,
Yeah. The stance of the podcast is that the populace should not. We do not support the legal ownership of nuclear warheads.
There you go. Okay, perfect. But, like, because you're drawing the line before that, and maybe not even nukes, maybe you're just like bombs or the missiles that are in Ukraine or whatever it may be. If you're drawing the line before that, I don't know that any number of civilians, especially because we're considering militias here, like, that wouldn't be the entire population. Let's say it's half the population. I don't think that would ever be appropriately contrary to the level of technology that the government has. And I think that's been fair for a long time.
Ooh, see, I completely disagree. I understand the point of, okay, what's an AR-15 going to do against a, you know, autonomous drone? And that's a fair point, right? Like, you're going to shoot an AR-15 an autonomous drone like that. That's dumb. But if the government goes to war against the citizenry, the first thing the citizenry is going to stop doing is stop supporting the military-industrial complex. So the military is not getting anything more that they have, at least at the rate at which they could have it.
I think you're assuming a joint citizenry, though. Like, let's be a little realistic here.
Well, I think that was the whole. I think that is part of the point of the Constitution, and maybe this hypothetical Spencer setup. If a state is going to war, if a state is going to war against the government, I think that's one thing. But I think a state going, or a group of states or whatever, or a small group of people going to war against the government, I don't think that was ever going to go in favor of the small group. Like if Connecticut,
that was sorry to interrupt.
No.
But that was just if we're going against if we're comparing it to the founders, even that was split. That wasn't a united state. There were still loyalists. To that extent, to the extent of the Civil War, I don't think that you would ever. I mean, this is a very in-depth conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd ever like cut off a whole industry. And if that's the way you do it, that's not really a militia argument anymore.
I don't necessarily think of it. So, like the Civil War, for example, the South had to establish their own means of producing weapons because they could no longer obtain weapons from the North.
Okay.
If the United States, like citizen population, decided to go to war against the military, against the government, the United States government is going to have to figure out a way to acquire new weapons because a vast majority of the citizenry is no longer going to be taking part in the manufacture of weapons. But then you also got to look at, okay, unmanned drones, whatever. Now you have to take the physical location where those drones are being flown. So maybe it will be more difficult to get people to said facility, said base, but the capacity or the ability of the government to try and use, like, the government couldn't win a war just with drones. There's no way. And I
mean,
and I know maybe you're thinking of Ukraine.
I'm thinking of Israel.
The problem with Israel is Israel is such a small, densely populated place and has such a small population compared to the United States. I think one of the biggest things that would be in the favor of a citizenry is the fact that we are geographically humongous. The United States military does not have the ability to carpet bomb. Shout out to Jack Forrest, who's walking past me right there. I went to high school with that guy. He's a geek.
Is he the personification of carpet bombing?
Oh, 100%.
That's
No, that's a
crazy.
joke. That's a joke.
He has no idea right now.
He has no clue. I'll text him at some point.
He's on a podcast that's
It was
going
like
to be
you'll never
listened to
believe
by
what we said about you.
hundreds of people.
But
Maybe thousands.
Millions of people.
millions.
Yeah. We're aiming big.
The government does not have the ability to carpet bomb the entire United States at once.
Right, but a militia? Like I don't know, you got to organize somewhere. I don't know.
I know, but
This feels like a different
I guess
argument,
what I'm envisioning in this militia is this is a
Carpet bombs walking by you again.
that was somebody else. Oh, wait. No. The person I waved to was somebody else. Jack
I
must
was
have
like,
already
that
walked
wasn't
by.
even him?
Did
But
you know the person you waved to?
Nope. I was
Okay.
just being friendly. I know that guy though. Who's,
The tall one.
No, not the dude with the water bottle.
I can't see what
He's got it's in his left hand. He's wearing a black baseball jersey and it's got red on the bottom of the sleeve.
You want me to knock on the window to try to get like everybody's attention?
I think that's Cincinnati Reds jersey. Here's the thing. I don't think he remembers me. I saw him at a party after a football
Jack
game.
Forrest. That name sounds familiar.
So you're just creeping on him?
No. I don't think.
I just check his Facebook every night.
Facebook.
I don't
really
think
aged you
he
there.
remembers me is all.
Oh yeah.
But
Speaking of the
I didn't say
Gen Z one-
MySpace.
Well, that would have been ridiculous.
that
That
would have been crazy.
ridiculous.
That would have aged you.
That would have
Yeah.
been like saying that.
I had a
No, I'm not.
MySpace.
I'm
We'll get to the generations is coming up in here in just a minute, but
We're foreshadowing.
Yes.
yeah. But before we get too in the weeds about the
Yeah.
whole Second Amendment thing, I was going to bring up my other point with the other side of the thing with the background checks, like background checks.
Yeah, I think we
for-
got too in the weeds.
yeah, for gun ownership. That on the surface and on paper, that sounds like a great idea. But a lot of the conservative side's argument against that is that who's deciding which offenses and what kind of people aren't allowed to have guns, and like, you see where I'm going with that?
The conservative side's making that argument.
Well, like the argument is like if if you can ban certain people from having guns through background checks or if have committed certain crimes, then which crimes are you going to add to that, and could that be used to unfairly target more conservative leaning people?
Sorry, I know Antifa's a different episode, but that sounds so Antifa of them.
That sounds so Antifa of them.
Yeah. That seems pretty we're scared of fascism to me. No, I think that's fair. The reason I was questioning that it was the rights argument is because I think it's a lot easier to keep weapons out of the hands of like marginalized groups as a general statement than somebody's political views. This is why I like questioned it for a second, because I was like, that almost feels like it could be a race argument. That being said, I think like to a certain level I understand the point that's being made. That it can become very, nitpicky, it could become very weaponized, stuff like that. The main points that I'd have against that is that, one, the cliche of don't let perfect be the enemy of progress. I think that because you can still enforce some restrictions, right? Violent offenders, bare minimum violent offenders. If you have gone to jail for a serious violent crime, if you have domestic abuse, charges, threats, repeated whatever, that bare minimum should be you can't have a gun because you've shown that you're going to hurt people. I don't think that being upset with a potential end goal is enough of a reason to not make any progress and say no background checks, period. Because I get it. I really do, especially because I can see the argument against marginalized groups, and I see it from that perspective. But that's not enough of a reason for me to sit back and do nothing. Yeah. Can I make one joke?
Go for it.
I was going to say, if domestic violence and violent offenders are the bare minimum, then, jokingly again, why do you think that's going to target conservatives? Why do you feel offended by that?
That's funny. I chuckled in my head.
Perfect. I'll take it. I don't mean that seriously.
No. Yeah.
Dylan smirked a little bit.
Perfect.
I did.
Any closing arguments on the Second Amendment issue before we move on?
I mean, did you want to say anything about background checks?
Yeah. Here,
I have a feeling we could drive this on for 10 hours if we wanted.
Easily.
I could.
We could make it a whole season.
I mean, we were talking about the ways in which you rebel against the government.
I could war game for forever about that.
No, that's a great.
Yes, I agree that there should be some very, very base level of background checks. Or there should be, I say robust, but very thorough background checks on individuals, because at the very least we should be screening people for purchasing firearms.
Agreed.
I think we need to make that process a lot more updated and a lot quicker, because part of the reason is I feel, at least I guess, and I don't want to speak for all conservatives, but I feel part of the pain comes from maybe how arduous is that arduous of a process it is. And so if we could find a way to modernize it while still being very thorough, very in-depth, but make it a very quick process, maybe that could help alleviate a lot of the pain of, I say pain in quotations, or that people would feel like going through a background check. You don't want it to take forever. And then I think, murderers, if you're a convicted murderer, or you're a convicted, domestic abuser, or have, I know violent crime is a broad thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not well versed in what all crimes make up a violent crime, but stuff like that. I think there's legitimate argument to be made about not letting those individuals have firearms. But I would also worry to the point of you would have to make sure that there are mechanisms in place so that it can't be used to
target a certain
target a certain group of individuals based on whatever characteristic you want to come up with.
That's fair.
I think that would be bad. And the other thing I would point out is, people talk about how America has very lax gun laws compared to, like Europe, for example, and that is true. We do have less gun regulation than Europe does, and then people will make the claim that by taking away, I'm not saying taking away, but by the much stricter laws surrounding guns in Europe, there is less gun violence, which there is less gun violence in Europe. Statistical fact. But while I think there is a strong correlation between, well, I think that is a solution, I don't think that is the best solution, because if you look at a country like Switzerland has roughly the same level of gun restrictions as the United States does. And I've seen videos and documentaries, and like the former, I don't know if Switzerland has a president or if it's a PM, whatever. Like former head of government of Switzerland is like at a gun show with zero security, isn't wearing like a gun vest. Like Obama, Trump, Biden, former president, active president, you would get shot in 7 seconds here in America.
Yeah, not in a million years.
Yeah, there's no way that would happen. And so I think that goes to show that there is a deeper issue.
Dare I say, though, that they just have less gun culture?
No, they have as big of Switzerland has as big of a gun culture as America does. Like they are teaching their children. I think that's part of it.
I don't know about this. I'm asking.
No, you're good.
If I remember correctly, aren't you required to have a gun?
I think that's but
I
like
believe so.
that's
Or at least every
I'm
house.
wrong.
that is
Maybe
that is
wrong.
that is kind of what I'm getting to. Is I don't remember all the specifics, but in Switzerland, they do a very great job of raising their families, raising the younger generations, the children. I think that is a big reason to why Switzerland is able to have such low regulation on firearms and still be as safe of a place as Switzerland is. I think if we tried to find a way to apply that here in America, that would be beneficial. But then I also think, because there's always the extenuating individual that is just whatever. I think we have to try and tackle, and I feel like this phrase gets weaponized, but like mentally ill individuals that get a hold of firearms. And I feel like that phrase has become weaponized, which is unfortunate because there are individuals who just aren't right in the head and shouldn't have a gun. And if we can find ways to help people like that, then maybe that is another step we can take.
Sure.
So that we don't have to regulate firearms. Like it's possible as a society. There are things. It is possible. The question is, do we have a plan to actually do it, and are we actually able to do it? And I would say right now as a country, we don't have a plan, and we aren't in the place to be able to try and do something like that. And it's unfortunate because the only other option is restrict gun rights to try and tackle the issue, which I would hope we could all agree if we could magically snap our fingers and there was never a mass shooting ever again and everybody could have 20 guns if they wanted to, like, yay personal freedom and yay no more people getting shot. But we're just not at that point yet, and I think that's an unfortunate state of our country. So that's, I guess, kind of my last 2 cents.
Can I say one last thing on the mental health aspect,
Yes.
and then we'll call it? Because I know we need to move into the next section, but
Oh, you're good.
I think just on the mental health things, this is really important. If anything, that is the place that I'm seeing where it is people being targeted. Because for like picking and choosing who gets guns, who doesn't. Because one, mental health is being used so broadly. And I don't think it's with well intentions always. I think it's really easy. And these are arguments that I've heard from the right to say, oh, that person was mentally deranged. Move on. It won't happen next time. When one, this is the same side actively not investing in mental health resources, and not really addressing the issue of why these things are happening. Two, in terms of the targeting specific groups. Yeah, in terms of targeting specific groups, there was one. I'm the way that our country is. I don't remember which shooting it was, but there was one specific case where it was a transgender person, allegedly, that carried out a mass shooting, and immediately I saw transgender people shouldn't have guns, because apparently that's the mental illness. I think things like that can be really dangerous versus having a more straightforward, and yes, I agree, like if we can invest in mental health resources, completely agree. Part of that, though, is having a system that says, if there's complaints against this person, if they've shown, obsession with serial killers, things like that, yes, I agree. You shouldn't let that person have guns. But I think there needs to be something broader and more robust, as you were saying, that at least in the meantime can get us to a place where known problematic individuals, for one reason or another, aren't able to access weapons.
Yeah, I guess very quickly would agree. If you can prove an individual is problematic, then there should be some sort of, at the very least, temporary restriction on their ability to possess a weapon until some sort of more definitive, permanent conclusion can be reached.
Yeah.
That is something that I've always thought was a really good way to do that. Like, not to ban them like permanently, but it's like, okay, you can't have a gun for the next month while we figure out what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Just a temporary thing. Like,
yeah.
Or like
several people have flagged you as being this, so let's figure this out.
Court-ordered, therapy type thing, too. Like, there's ways that we circumvent this in other areas that haven't been applied to these kind of situations.
And to touch on the mental health thing as well, I think that phrase has been weaponized, and mental health is a very, very broad thing. I have family members. One of my best friends is ADHD. I guess ADHD is technically
right.
I guess technically a mental
disability
in the broadest sense, and I'm not saying
it goes back to the whole background check thing. The issue with the background check is who decides what in your background is going to limit you from guns? The same thing with mental health. Who decides what counts as mental health?
Yes.
So both are seemingly good solutions, but they're very open to
interpretation,
to corruption. Yes.
And I think that's what makes a lot of individuals nervous, because very rarely do we as a country restrict something and then unrestrict it later down the road. Which is why I hope we can just find a way to institute better gun culture in our country so we don't have to restrict. But
all right.
I can cross my fingers and pray, so that's about it at the moment.
All right, are we in agreement that we're ready to move on to Gen Z?
I think so.
Yes.
You think
Let's
so?
do Gen Z.
I mean, we could have that conversation all day, so I think we're good to... We don't want him.
Don't want him.
He's a new face of the Republican Party.
Don't want him. Give me Waylon.
But you were okay with the Trump video?
Vance
Give
Allen.
me Waylon.
But you were okay with that one.
I need Waylon Jennings back,
He's
please.
not responding.
All right, let's go.
Let's move on.
Go back to Gen Z. Okay, so all that was edited out. We were just discussing the deceased rock star Gigi Allen, who I am not related to,
and should not be Googled.
Yeah, I'm cutting out everything we just discussed about him because it is rancid. But don't Google it, which means you probably will. But you've been warned. Everybody knows who Gigi
Your
Allen is
discretion
now.
advised.
Yeah, we do not condone Gigi Allen on this podcast. But speaking of degenerates, we're going to talk about Gen Z.
Wow. Coming from the millennial, great segue.
Millennial.
Great segue.
All right.
I want to be offended, but that was well done.
That was, yeah.
Well, Dylan had strong feelings if he wants to start, unless you have something, Spencer.
I guess we should start by the perspective of our generations. All right. So I'm a millennial. I was born in 1990, which puts me right in the middle of the millennial range. And when we met at the Rockets Pizza, I was talking about how I had always assumed that generations were sort of defined by traumatic events that happened, millennials experienced 9/11. Not sure what, Gen Z would be COVID, I guess, but I was actually incorrect. It has a lot more to do with relationship to digital media.
That makes sense.
And I think technically like the most commonly accepted one, and I'm guessing like this is going to be probably, if these go onto a platform where comments are enabled, this episode's going to get a lot, especially from the Second Amendment.
yeah.
And if we got anything wrong with Switzerland, we're going to have those well actually people. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, well, actually Gen Z is blah blah blah. But anyway, this is what we're looking at. All right, so. My generation, millennials, we began growing up without technology, and we came of age during the rise of the internet and technology. So we understand what it was like before, as it started, and then as it became big.
I know exactly what you mean, but saying before technology and
Well,
also trying not to call yourself old is really funny.
Yeah, well, we're not including like the horse and buggy as technology. Listen, before the internet,
There it is.
before the digital era. Whereas Gen Z, which would be you two, you're both the same age, right?
Yes.
Basically, you have never known a world without the internet.
Yeah.
All right. I remember before computers were in schools, I remember how it was really only rich people had a personal computer in their home. And even then, it was this huge thing that required dial up. And there were 3 actual websites, and most everything was very like underground. And you had to know how to code to get to a message board. I remember things not being live. You had to like refresh it over and over again to see if somebody responded to your IMDb message board post. And yes, I had a MySpace when I was in high school. Everybody had a MySpace. That was back when you could rank your friends. Looking back, that was kind of toxic, but because everybody had a top friends, and it was
But
always
it was chosen?
yeah, you chose because no matter how many friends you had, only like your top 5 showed, and you ordered them.
That's crazy.
And there would be drama sometimes.
Let's
They're
bring
like,
that
well, why
back.
is
No, I think it'd be
they're
hilarious.
like,
to
why
bring it
is
back.
this person your top friend? And they got like, my get around was that I like followed random celebrities and put those in my top
That's
5.
funny.
Werner Herzog was my top friend on MySpace. There was something where you could make it random. You could randomize your top friends, so it was random each time. But somebody not knowing you had the random on,
Ah.
if they didn't really know you that well, they went to your page and they were your top friend. They would be like, oh, that's creepy.
That is, yeah, I can see that.
Why are you my top friend? But going beyond the technological and internet aspect of all of that, like as far as like generational philosophies and the way of seeing the world, I think I mentioned before when we were talking about this, millennials were very optimistic and positive. If you look back at millennial music, it's all very poppy and happy and screaming about how young and beautiful everybody is and the world
Tonight's
is
the
theirs.
night.
Tonight's the night. Are you leaving?
Nope.
You're like, oh, you're
sitting
disgusted by millennials?
I'm
He's
getting
disgusted by the optimism.
Yeah, the optimism.
Last night didn't go so well for him.
ready. Optimism.
The optimism.
For context of future listeners, this is the day after 2025 election day that went amazingly well for my party. So I'm actually in a very optimistic mood currently.
I didn't want to bring that up and like put a pall over
Hey. I'm optimistic because people are going to realize very quickly that Zoran Mamdani is not the answer to all their problems, and I am so excited to watch.
everything. Is it because he's a millennial?
Yes, I'm so excited to watch the Miami real estate market boom.
That's funny. I heard
wow.
people say
Everybody moving to
Florida's
Miami.
full online.
Oh wow.
Oh.
But anyway, with
Yeah.
the whole positivity thing, like something that I've noticed with a lot of millennials, like if you notice, like the millennial generation is, I mean, I'm not speaking for all millennials. Like whenever I speak of like a generation, I'm not saying like all of them, but like the defining majority of them, like millennials are pretty liberal. Like everybody kind of realizes that. And I know that growing up, like being a millennial, all of my friends, everybody was like pretty liberal, and it was this idea back then, like that progress was linear. Everything was always going to get better. Like social rights would always improve, no matter how bad things were at the time. It was that optimism was still there, that it would still get better over time. Things would get better. And then like when that started not happening, a lot of millennials got really disillusioned. And that's kind of like where millennials are at the moment. Very disillusioned and disappointed with Gen Z. But
Yeah, because it's our fault?
no, but I don't know. I'm just joking.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're disappointed in Gen Alpha. It's an ongoing cycle.
Yeah. Everything I'm saying about Gen Z, you all are going to be saying about Gen Alpha in
Yeah.
about 10 years.
Or now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look really scared. Is there somebody out there scared?
No. I'm getting ready.
Is it Carpet Bomber guy?
Oh, are you really excited about the game?
No, I'm really excited.
Oh,
about
you're
this
preparing
topic.
for the topic.
Ah,
Okay.
Yes,
I'll let
I'm
him go
looking
then.
forward
I don't have
to
any
it.
strong.
But yeah, so and I was gonna bring up something like there are like various generational stereotypes, and like I'm sure you all have some for millennials. But like one of my favorite ones about Gen Z, it's kind of harmless but annoying at the same time. But I don't know if you've ever heard it, but like how Gen Z is very bad at the concept of like social space.
Yeah.
Like a group of Gen Z friends will take up the entire sidewalk and not understand why someone's having to walk around them, and they get angry. Just the other day, in one of the buildings here on campus, I was going down the stairs, and there were these obviously Gen Z, like your age people down there, making a TikTok video, taking up the entire stairway, and I was just kind of sitting there staring, like, "Can I come through?" And they were looking at me like
Why
I
is he
was
looking at
interrupting
us?
their video. I'm like, "You're taking up the whole staircase."
This is funny.
But
I don't think
Anyway.
I've heard this complaint about Gen Z.
it's one of those things that once you know it, you'll see it everywhere.
No, like I already am seeing it.
yeah, but
That's funny.
that's yeah. So what are your complaints about millennials, or are you just going to complain about?
I think he's going to complain about
you're
Gen
just going
Z.
to complain about your own people.
We're
Are
getting
you a
nod from
millennial at
Dylan.
heart, or are you a boomer at heart?
I'm a boom. What? Well, I'm a boomer at heart.
Classic Republican.
I'm an old person at
You're
heart.
an old person.
I am. I've been 60 since I was 12. My generation sucks. We suck. Like, epically suck. And that has zero to do with. I say that not even factoring in my personal political views on the generation, nor my religious views on the generation. We just suck. Like,
Give me an example. Why do you suck?
because nobody has an attention span. That's not how
Valid.
life works.
Valid.
That's valid.
They complained about millennials for the exact same thing because we couldn't pay attention to something for more than like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now 10 minutes is a lifetime.
Dare I say that's not our fault?
It is our fault.
What do you mean?
It's technology. It's the algorithms' fault.
Yeah.
No, it's not. You have personal autonomy.
It's
Don't get
predatory.
I don't
now
have
we have personal autonomy.
Can we edit this out? If I tee right now, we edit everything out I'm going to say for the next 60 seconds?
yeah, but just tell us when we're time back in.
Timing back in. We
Hey,
suck.
Could you send me that little bit of?
We suck. Like, zero attention span. Everybody thinks they're the center of their own universe. We're soft as a generation. It's annoying.
You are a boomer.
We are soft. Like you know when you see the thing on Instagram and it's the hard men create strong times create easy times create weak men create hard times. We are currently living through the millennials and whatever the generation before millennials are. Gen X?
Yeah.
Gen X and millennials were the strong men, and I say men and women, the strong men that created good, easy times that is now yielding a weak generation. I
Yeah, kinda-
also know that guy who just sat down behind the
Why do
window.
you know everything?
You know everyone.
I know everybody. He also probably doesn't remember me.
Is he? Would he be one of your top 5 MySpace friends?
No.
Okay.
Dang,
That was a very
Sorry.
quick no.
friends
No.
are being ranked on this show.
I'm gonna say like you two are really this topic's got you two so animated you're like blowing out the audio charts, but
sorry.
I'm leaving it in because it's funny.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, this is-
Yeah. So
we're so professional on this podcast. It's
We-
episode 2. Let it give us a break.
we are
for the
literally we are a soft generation.
He says loudly.
We everybody is dependent on others. Nobody has any self-independence. Nobody has any critical thinking. Nobody is ever willing to take like risks. Like this is an example I'll use. I tutored several kids in high school. When I was in high school, they were younger than me. I tutored them. And they would expect me to like give them the answers. And I'd have them. We'd like look at a problem. I'd be like, okay, like what's the first thing you're gonna do? And they'd look at me and they'd go, I don't know. And I'd be like, okay, well, like, and I'd try and talk them through the problem, but they would just want me to do it for them.
Yeah.
Like, our generation has such a sense of entitlement.
Remember, I taught Gen Z for a few years. I'm hearing everything you're saying
Yeah,
as a teacher of you people.
yeah.
Of you people.
like, I think parents have gotten lax on their children, and I'm not necessarily implying like we should. That's not me implying we should bring back paddling or anything. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. But
What about shock collars? We want to get into that debate.
no shock collars. Though, my funny story aside, like, we had shock collars for my dogs, like when we were training them and
Yeah.
everything. We don't use them now.
Especially after Hassan.
I was gonna make that joke.
And my grandfather thought it would be funny to put the shock collar on him and then let me and my sister zap him at the highest setting.
Grandfather?
So we did that.
Was your grandfather Albert Fish?
No, but he is a special individual.
Google that one too, audience.
We will, yeah.
I do know that one.
But so just, and we're apathetic and we're unhealthy. And yes, part of that is like maybe this is like a little bit of a conspiracy. Maybe this is as much of a conspiracy theory individual as I will get. That like we are, I don't want to say poison because I don't want to go like RFK here, but the food we are eating is horrible for us. And when you
That's been a thing.
I know, but it is only getting worse. And
It
the
is.
difference
Is it because good food isn't affordable anymore?
I
Shout
don't
out to
think
Ron.
it is. I don't think it. I think to that argument very quickly, it's not that good food is unaffordable. It's that good food has always been a price, and then when you magically introduce Doritos, because there's literally nothing to it, you can make Doritos for so much cheaper, and then that price disparity happens for long enough that you then think good food is unaffordable because the Doritos have been there for so long.
I mean,
So
it's
the
also
problem is
because-
capitalism.
Oh!
No,
Keep
that's
that
not
in,
the problem.
keep that in.
The problem is, my mother's calling me. The problem
That's
is
a
not
future episode.
capitalism. The problem is not capitalism. Because that's, I forget the specific name of that theory, but that's like an anchoring theory about why a company will have a very high-priced product. Not that they really sell the high-priced product, but to get you to buy the medium-priced product.
I mean,
Because it's cheap in comparison, but that doesn't mean that it's unaffordable. But
would also
regardless,
things would also be cheaper if minimum wage went up.
no, because then the costs of companies go up.
That's not necessarily how that works. That's a different argument.
I mean,
I just had to throw
As
it
a
in there.
finance student, it is because the costs, the variable costs associated
Write
with
that down,
production go up.
Write that down as a future episode.
Capitalism?
No.
I'm not a socialist, for the record. But capitalism should
Well, not
definitely
like
be a
not
future.
minimum
necessarily
wage?
like capitalism / minimum wage, and then what's going to be our non-political topic on that one? We'll think of it in the
gambling.
future.
I don't know.
Gambling.
Gambling. I have so many good stories to tell.
I
But
worked
anyway,
at a gas station for 15 years selling lottery tickets.
Nothing.
Gamblers, really.
Gambler's delight.
Oh, I got some stories.
But we're so unhealthy as a generation, and the difference is all of the ultra processed foods got introduced when like millennials were we're teenagers or adults and stuff. The difference is like my generation, we've been eating Doritos since birth, whereas you guys have been eating Doritos since you were 12 or whatever.
Doritos have been around since like the 40s.
Okay, but my point stands.
I don't think it does stand.
It does stand. We're an unhealthy.
I will say that
I think autonomy is the problem that you're trying to make.
What do you mean?
The reason that the reason that manufactured food is more affordable is because there's more automation and less like wage consideration.
automation is our non-political.
That's not non-political. What? I just brought it up in the context of
I don't-
living wages.
I mean, everything's political, but,
But
I,
it
mean,
doesn't-
I think
it
it
doesn't-
would. I think it'd be fun.
It's not necessarily but just.
We're
I don't think that has
writing future
anything
episodes as we go.
related systemically to food costs as the reason for such an unhealthy demographic. And I know I'm getting a face from my amazing co-host.
is related to food costs?
No, automation is related to the
Whew.
cost of food. Automation is related to the cost of food. I'm not saying the cost of food is the reason my generation is more unhealthy
Okay.
than any generation
Okay, that's fair.
previously. So yeah.
I understand that.
Oh, because automation lowers variable costs. When you have a lower variable cost, you can sell something for cheaper.
Yeah.
Kelly Kid in the House.
Yeah.
Kelly Kid in the House.
It's just.
And kind of.
I have so much to say.
Yeah. Let me crap on my generation a little bit.
Hang on, can I finish crapping on
Sure.
mine? Give me 20 more seconds.
Finish crapping
And so
on
I
yours.
have so much to say.
It's just, and then like with the TV and the internet, now everybody, I love it. There's a Carvana commercial where it's a person in a doctor's office and they go to the doctor because all they're doing is scrolling on their phone. It just shows them scrolling, and it's the doctor goes, "You have a case of scoliosis."
I've seen this.
And the cure for scoliosis is them like picking a car on Carvana and buying the car. But like we have scoliosis as a generation. Like we can't get off of our phones. And I can admit, like I have a problem, but I then made my roommate put time limits on my phone and then not give me the password, so that I can't spend my eternity on my device. Like it just, and then we just want to blame all of our own problems on people other than ourselves. And it's just I have.
Speaking of like the scoliosis thing you talked about, like that like, and then speaking of like things with Gen Z and now what's the next one, Gen Alpha?
Gen Alpha, it's even worse for them.
But like
I feel bad for them.
There's zero hope for them.
I disagree with that.
But it's a thing that's like, certain things have always existed. Like Doritos have existed since, let's just say, Doritos have existed since ancient Egypt. All right, and they just
Can confirm I was there.
You were there.
That's why the pyramids were in that shape.
Yeah, but they do become. I'm sure the ingredients now. I'm sure they weren't healthy when they were invented, but they're probably less so now.
Yeah.
They're cheaper, more mass produced. The same thing with the scoliosis thing. Back way before smartphones and touch screens, people still did the same thing. I remember. Any of you ever heard of Live Leak?
No.
Live Leak, Ogrish.
Nope.
Millennials.
You're just saying words.
Dark millennials know what I'm talking about. These were shock sites back in the day, which would post like horrible gore videos and stuff. And even though a lot of people didn't want to admit it, they would go there and you would just kind of like flip through the pages and you'd like, oh, whoa, and that kind of thing. It was like that was our version of doom scrolling back in the day. You would see that kind of thing. And after 9/11, there was a huge thing. A lot of people forget this. Pictures of the bodies
Yep.
would be posted online, and everybody would be like, have you seen this? Why would anybody ever look at this? I'm going to send it to all my friends. Like it existed, but these days with smartphones and everything, you don't like back then you had to go sit in your bedroom and do it. Now you take it with you outside. You take it with you in the car, on the bus to school, everything. And with Gen Alpha, like they're going to be wearing it with like Google Glass, whatever. Like we think the phones are bad now. Like
Wait till they're holograms.
yeah.
I'm not saying that I disagree with everything that was said, but I do feel the need to be the counter argument for a minute. The one that really, I mean, this isn't a video, so you can't see it, but the one that really got me animated, I think it's ridiculous to say that Gen Z aren't empathetic. Holy crap, that's ridiculous to say. Yeah. I think there's a very different thing between being disillusioned and being unempathetic.
I didn't say we were unempathetic.
You said there's no empathy. That was a thing that you said.
I did not say.
If you did in this part of the podcast, I'll rewind it and it'll be said here. Quote, "Hello. Editing Spencer here. What Dylan said was that Gen Z can be very apathetic, and apathetic and unempathetic don't necessarily mean the same thing. They can be easily confused. So I'm going to say that Dylan and Anushka are tied here. It's a draw. Both win. Back to the episode." Unquote. But
Please,
if not,
I have zero recollection of saying empathy.
I would lose my mind if you didn't say that, because I had a visceral reaction to it. Because I think this is something that gets passed around a lot, and I disagree to my core. I want to say one blanket statement that is probably unfair to you two who are making these arguments, but I think it needs to be said, which is that your entire perspective and this entire perspective of different generations is purely American. I think a lot of this is purely American. It's cultural relevance is the context that we grew up in, which is fair. But I think it's unfair to say that our generation is inherently weak or doesn't work hard or is entitled when the generational thing is true for everybody. And I also...
What do you mean everybody?
Like, generations are as an age gap is true regardless of where you're born. I don't think that Gen Z people in, I don't know, Sudan are the same as Gen Z people here, which is why I really disagree with a lot of these generalizations. And you can even go, in the U.S., I don't think that Gen Z people across the country are the same. And I think that there's a caricature that gets spread online, but also in general. And I understand we're stereotyping. That's fair. I'm not trying to be, the nerd glasses of this all. I am the only one wearing glasses.
The before mentioned, well, actually.
Right, exactly. Like I just think it needs to be said for a second because we are looking at a small section of this. The parts that get me, especially the parts that are the reason I still have hope in our generation is things that I'm seeing internationally. An example that made me really, really proud of the generation is when you saw that wave over the summer of protests across the world, Nepal specifically. Full Gen Z protest in true character organized on Discord. An overthrow of the government in a matter of weeks, if not less, because of things that were inherently Gen Z. I don't think you can say that's weak. I don't think you can say that that's entitled. I don't think you can say that it's lacking attention or empathy. Again, I recognize the context in which you guys were talking, but I think it's important anyway because our circumstances prevent us from being at our best sometimes, including things like the algorithm or whatever. But I don't think that that's anything inherent to the age group or the world events or anything like that. Also, and I say this more as a joke, but I know a lot of my friends will relate to this. It depends on who your parents are, because us immigrant kids will tell you that, we were not handed everything as children. I'm not saying I got paddled, but let's just say that it wasn't always a nice little talking to. It wasn't always gentle parenting. I think I agree what you're saying, which we blame other people. That's fine. I get what you mean by that. But I think to imply that all of this is inherent of the generation and not a direct product of the circumstances that we're in is unfair. Because, the circumstances have created this, and this has been true for everybody. The reason that the boomers are the way they are is because of the wars. The reason that millennials are the way that they are is because of the boomers. And so I don't think it's fair to blame individuals or blame a generation as a whole because of that. This got a lot more philosophical than I was intending it to. I know this was a joking episode. But the last thing I was going to say that I'm now oh yeah. This is one that, again, my parents are immigrants. My dad came from literally nothing. And so I have a lot of sympathy to what I'm about to say, but the point is to make it easier. If our lives were not easier and more entitled than our parents, then that would be a failure of our parents, because that's the whole point that you want for your kids. I hope that my kids are more entitled than I am. I'm not saying I think I'm particularly entitled, but I hope that their lives are easier and they have to deal with less and they can sit back and scroll on their phones. You know what I mean? So I think that as a general statement, Dylan just sat up and see. I think as a general statement, that's I don't see that as a negative, even though I understand, especially because we're seeing. I know we're not going to talk about the election, but the fact that we're breaking records of turnout, things like that show that there's still empathy. The fact that there was 3 million doors knocked or whatever in that campaign shows that people are putting in work, things like that. I just don't. I recognize that it's easy to complain about a lot of things, and I definitely have my complaints about our generation. If anybody's ever looked at my Instagram, but
as have I,
yeah,
or as I have,
right. But I don't think that net negative is a fair comparison, especially given that we are in unprecedented times.
Yeah, it is important. We probably should have pointed that out earlier, that when we're, especially with me and Dylan, we're talking about millennials and Gen Z, we're talking from a very middle-class American perspective, not a global perspective. So
yes.
It's important to recognize that. And something else I'd like to point out with that is it is very important to realize that a generation might have a bunch of negative aspects, but they're like that because that's how the previous generation made them. And you mentioned, I think you skipped right from boomers to millennials. I
forgot Gen X. My parents are Gen X. That's my bad.
Well, before Gen X, I think it was The Lost Generation?
Yeah, I thought
Which
that
is
was
the coolest
boomers.
one? I thought the Lost Generation was after Boomers.
Wait, it was before.
Was it before?
It was before because they were the ones that went into the war versus boomers with the kids
No, I thought
after.
it was a silent generation.
Yeah, same thing.
Silent.
No, because there's a silent generation and a lost
And a Lost
generation.
Generation?
Correct us in the comments. I don't know. I thought it was the
Yeah.
Lost Generation, but
Well-
I'm probably wrong.
Well, while Anushka looks that up, this gives me an opportunity.
Those who came of age during World War One were the Lost Generation.
Okay,
And
so I
then
had
the
it
silent
backwards.
generation was World War II,
I would think.
I think, because I think that was like silent generation
Because
depression
the
related.
Boomers were born when all the troops
Silent
came home
Generation.
from World War II.
Silent Generation were interwar years.
Okay.
To the end of the World War, and then
Okay.
boomers.
Well, so anyway, yeah. So I guess I should have clarified when I was talking about generations, I meant America specifically, the American Gen Z generation. I don't know enough about Gen Z in other nations to even feel comfortable commenting on it.
Fair.
Just not educated enough.
Because from different cultures and different
Yes,
economic
and there's
backgrounds, it would be totally.
so many different
Totally
things.
I
different.
do recognize that I kind of sidelined the
No,
conversation.
no. That's a fair point. That is a good point of clarification that
That's
I'm
why
glad,
we're having this podcast.
I'm glad we have made. I still have zero recollection of saying empathy, but maybe I did. I do agree with the statement that it should be the mission of parents to provide in a way for their children so their children have a better growing up experience than they did. And to use my dad as an example, my dad grew up very poor. They qualified for food stamps at several points in his childhood. My grandfather, very proud individual, never took them and made everything work, blah, 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 blah. Like, grandparents are fine, never had any, like, other issues. But just, I think that's a big thing. Like, I think one of the things he is most proud of is he knew the, like, economic position him and his family were in back then. And he has been able to provide far more than what he was able to have as a kid. And I think that's the mission. I think that should be the mission. I think there's a difference between that and entitlement, though, because in my opinion, an entitled individual is somebody that thinks they deserve something.
That's fair.
I don't think, and to think you deserve it, then in my mind implies that you're not as grateful for it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think, and so I know that's probably being semantical, but I think our generation, yes, we have it better than our parents' generation did. But I think at the same time, our generation is less grateful, less thankful, and because of that, we feel more entitled. I think that's just a poor...
It's almost like you lose sight of the work that went into getting the thing that you have.
Yes.
I'll concede that,
Well
for
said.
sure. Yeah.
And we are a product of the millennial generation, but the generation before that, depending on
I think like Gen X is
Gen
the one
X.
that raised you, right?
Gen
yeah,
X.
there's
Yeah,
usually
Gen
like
X,
a skip
sir.
a generation.
Yeah, Gen X. Excuse me.
Millennial, we're responsible for Gen Alpha.
Yeah, so like
Thanks
Gen
for
Z,
that.
like we are, from predominantly Gen X, and so there is truth to the forces that make you, that mold you a large part into who you are, but you can't use that as an excuse or a justification for, your own actions. And I know this is going to be like a real off the deep end example, but this is the first thing that came to my head because we were talking about like domestic abuse earlier in the episode with in terms of individuals, whether they should have guns or not. But just because you grow up in a household where abuse was commonplace, which would be tragic, that doesn't magically give you a right to now be able to go do that in your own household when you're an adult. So it sucks that some people are dealt more difficult hands than others in life, but you can't use that as an excuse to justify your own ineptness. And I think that is something we are seeing more in my generation, is the idea that we should be okay with accepting the things that have happened to us and using the things that happened to us as a justification for what we choose to do or not to do, when in prior generations it was, oh, that happened to me, that sucks, that's horrible, that shouldn't happen, I will deal with it in my own way, but I can't let that be the excuse to shut me down in life. And at least in my opinion, I feel like we have become my dad always says this, there's no such thing as a good excuse, and I feel like as a generation, at least an American generation, we have become all about trying to excuse our shortcomings with outside forces instead of just realizing it's our own personal shortcoming 99 times out of 100. That's what I'll say about the negative stuff about Gen X or Gen Z. The flip side is I think there's a lot of great things about Gen Z too.
Yeah.
So not to say I'm all doom and gloom. I think we have a lot of negative things going against us, but that is not to say I think we're, as a generation, completely screwed.
Unlike Gen Alpha.
Unlike Gen Alpha, there's zero hope for Gen Alpha. Sorry to my younger sister, who I think is technically Gen Alpha. You're SOL, kid.
Yeah, it's very natural for as long as there has been writing, everybody's always crapping on the generation below them. Because oh, you all don't realize how good you have it, or sometimes it's the opposite. But it's always I think, especially I'm seeing it a lot with myself and millennials. It's this gut reaction, not necessarily I want to say it's almost akin to jealousy, but it's like this anger that we're not young anymore. We're not the kids anymore. These people, we've made our mark, okay? Our time is waning and somebody else is taking our place.
Interesting.
I feel like that's every generation has that. And wait till Gen Alpha starts going to college and making videos and doing whatever
stuff they do.
Doing their thing. But I think you'll experience that. It's a lot of, because you'll see that a lot where they'll be like, oh, I can't stand this generation, and then after a while that kind of wears off, and you're just like, well, I guess they weren't that bad. Because when was the last time you heard anyone complain about a millennial? It's been a while.
Before this podcast, it's been a hot minute.
Well, it's been a minute.
The boomers especially used to complain about millennials. All that it was wall to wall. That's probably when you all were younger, but they were like, oh, all these liberal millennial cat girls and all that kind of stuff, and
Not the cat girls.
it was like a thing.
No,
and it's
I know what you mean.
But you never hear that anymore because they were like, okay, that the millennials were cringing on their territory, taking over their popular culture, and now that that's over, the new threat is coming. Which is you two.
Which is us too. In quick defense of Gen Alpha, I think that we were also pretty bad. Because somebody made the comparison of whatever brain rot's going around right now to our generation eating Tide Pods. And I went, you know what?
Is brain rot Gen Alpha?
Yeah.
That's not Gen Z?
Well, not to the current extent.
You started it, they're perfecting it.
Yes.
Anyway, what were you saying?
No, I just mean that, for the sake of I'm in a positive mood today, and I've been the one defending everybody, I'm just going to continue that for 1 second.
She's been the smiley person
I've been the
today.
smiley person, yeah. Which I don't know why. Well, I feel like I just had an exam, and so I should be a little bit more depressed because it didn't go great.
No, you balled out.
You're just basking in yesterday's elections.
I am a little bit. It's been a hot minute since I've had that much good news in one day.
I don't know where we are all going to be on election night 2026, but we need to be live wherever we're at.
I know where I'm going to be.
So it would probably be pretty difficult to have a live show during that, wouldn't it?
Hey, if this thing blows up,
we won't be
at
in the
least
same
call
spot.
in to something.
if this blows up in the next 12 months, I'll be here for it. I would gladly give you my moderately educated.
Can I say that one thing on Gen Alpha?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we keep interrupting you with all this crap.
It's
I guess
it's all right. We were all doing it to each other. Yeah, just to finish that thought out was that I think everyone needs to be given their time a little bit. I think that there's, in the same ways that we were talking about the situations that we're brought up in, I think going back to American generations for a second, like the culture that they're being raised in right now, between COVID interrupting like prime years of development and the like political culture, just everything is very tense right now. And so I think that they're not in like the best environment to be forming consciousness. So that being acknowledged, I think that just based on how generations work, everyone's just at that point in Gen Alpha that they're supposed to be dumb and a little bit hopeless. And I know that when we were in the Tide Pod eating phase, not that I ever ate a Tide Pod for the record.
Nor did I.
That was a millennial thing.
No, it wasn't.
Was it?
Nah, it was the 8-year-old like Gen Z kids. Whatever.
Really? I
That
thought
was
that was
very
mine.
much us. I don't know if you guys tried to
Yeah.
copy us, but that was
was
our
us.
specialty.
Yeah, but I just mean at the point where that was Gen Z and now is no longer Gen Z, thank God. I think that Gen Alpha has a little bit of hope, though it's not in their favor. I'm not going to defend them too much. I just felt the need to say that.
Speaking of the COVID thing and how we talked about like different cultures and everyone having different experiences growing up and generations being very different, given that like COVID lockdown was such a global thing, like it was North America, South America, even North Korea had lockdowns.
Yeah.
And they were very isolated. Do you think that in a way that is a global, universal part of Gen Alpha's development that's going to unify them in a way that
Yes.
other generations haven't been unified?
Yes,
Because
Yeah.
9/11, that was a very much an American Western
Experience.
thing,
especially the aftermath of it.
especially the aftermath of it. Like, and all these other things, like even something as big as World War II, that wasn't even universal. Like,
Yeah.
But COVID, that was.
I think it'll be a little bit interesting because of the political repercussions here. I don't want to say for a fact that we were the only ones where masks and vaccines got that political. We were definitely one of the only ones. I think that'll be like an interesting point, but
I think Russia got kind of spicy for a minute.
naturally, that actually really adds up.
Russia gets spicy over everything.
In the Russian way. But I think other than that little caveat, yes, absolutely. I remember thinking even in like the early days of the lockdown being like, you know what? When you're trying to find something positive, wow, this is really unlike me to be this optimistic. But when I was trying to find the positives of that, it was definitely everybody in the world. I could meet anybody in the world and be like, wow, lockdown was crazy, huh? And like have that moment. So I definitely think that and like the globalizing way of social media, 100% think that there's more likelihood for unity, even despite all the tension and all the polarization that's going on.
There's an episode
That's
idea
fair.
I'm sure I can't believe I didn't think of. Globalization.
Oh my God, I'm gonna kill that one. That's my whole thing. I'm a Hamilton Luger kid.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But I'll let your
No,
thoughts.
I agree.
He
with
wants
your,
there to be a wall around every country.
I did not say that.
No, I'm just joking. Especially Canada. Wall that place off.
No, that's the 51st state right there.
Oh my God.
Do you realize if that's the 51st state, the Republicans will never win another election? Because that's gonna.
That's the 51st state right there.
But I mean, is electoral vote speaking, I mean that's like a mega Texas, but for the Democrats.
However,
Until we
unless-
give them a dose of freedom,
That's
and they all
correct.
switch parties.
Send them a bunch of blue jeans.
unless we do what we did with Puerto Rico.
Oh, there's
Oh.
just territory.
Let's do that.
Oh, that's crazy.
There we go.
That's
Let's
crazy.
territorium. Let's do it. Here's the thing: Puerto Rico does not want to be a state.
The majority
Have
of the
you asked
citizens do.
Yes.
They've voted in support of it
They have
several
indeed.
times.
Several times.
From what I'm aware of, every time they've voted, it's been roughly like 35 to 40% have wanted statehood.
So, I'm assuming that was a three-way ballot with independence on the line.
Well, yeah. Do
Well-
you want to stay as you are? Do you want to be a state? Do you want to be a U.S. state, or do you want to secede completely
Right.
and be your own
Okay,
country?
so there are three options. I was
That's
like, what
three
are the other
options.
options? I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that makes sense.
I think that's the only correct way to ask that question.
No, that's fine. But I'm just saying that if you're comparing status quo, which was the example we're giving with Canada, status quo to statehood, they would take statehood.
Well,
And I think Canada would say independence.
Canada lost the World Series, so they don't get an option. Sorry.
I'm
On that
so
note,
serious.
Is it 7 o'clock? It's time for you to leave?
It's 7:12. It's really time for him to leave. Have fun at the game.
Thank